right, so we're diving into a situation that's, well, about as high stakes as it gets, the Israel-Hamas conflict. You guys wanted the breakdown on the elimination of Hamas leader YAHYA Sinwar, and we're here to unpack exactly what went down, what it means, and what could be next.
And it's definitely a story with layers, a lot of them. This conflict, it's got this long, tangled history, and now this. This event, it could shift everything.
No kidding. Just to paint the picture for everyone listening, YAHYA Sinwar, he wasn't some, low-level operative. This was the guy behind that awful attack back on October 7th, the one Netanyahu himself said was the most horrific since the Holocaust. We're talking massive escalation, and then, bam, Sinwar's gone.
Right, and that's exactly why this is making waves globally. October 17th, that's when it happened. Reports say Sinwar was moving between houses in Gaza near that Rafah crossing when he was hit. What's interesting is everyone thought he'd be hiding out in those tunnels, the elaborate ones they've got. But this time, seems he was caught out in the open.
See, that's what gets me. Drones were used, obviously, but they even did DNA testing after to make sure it was really him. It's like spy movie stuff,
Totally. The tech they're using in warfare these days, especially these targeted ops, it's changing so fast. And that DNA confirmation, it adds this whole other level. They need to be absolutely sure, given what's at stake internationally, if they get it wrong.
Absolutely. And this isn't the first time, right? Israel's gone after top Hamas figures before.
Exactly. The assassination of Ismail Haniyeh comes to mind. These targeted eliminations, they're part of this long and honestly really controversial history in the region. And what comes after is always complex. It's never as simple as taking out one leader and suddenly victory.
Because really it's about the message, isn't it? But who's it for? Hamas. A show of force for the world to see, or maybe even playing to their own people back home.
All great questions. And honestly, it's probably a mix of all of those things. But getting why they do this, that's key if we even want to start to understand what might happen because of it.
And the reaction to Sinwar's death has been just as, wild as the event itself. The world kind of went, whoa, what just happened? You have literal parties in the streets in Israel, right? But then world leaders are trying to figure out the whole thing, what it means for that whole region and for their own, relationships with both sides.
Yeah, it really highlights the whole global thing at play here. The U.S., for example, they came out strong, total support for Israel. Congrats on what they see as a win. But other big players, Trudeau up north, Sunak in the UK, even Macron in France, they've been way more cautious, you know what I mean? Lots of condolences, talk about things escalating, urging everyone to chill a bit.
Makes sense, right? When you think about those potential arms deals and how everything's balanced so precariously over there, there's already a ton of pressure on any country that looks like they're siding with Israel, and this just throws gasoline on that fire. I mean, Macron, even Guterres, the UN guy, they're getting hammered for what they've said about the conflict before all this.
Oh, and don't forget the timing of this whole thing. Just a few days before Sinwar's killed, bam, $4 million bounty on his head. Makes you think about the intelligence game leading up to it. Was this a calculated move? Did they have intel, or were there other things in play?
Well, that's right. 4 mil is serious cash. Makes you wonder who put that up and what they were hoping to get out of it. Desperate for info. Or some kind of power move.
Those are the million-dollar questions, right? It shows you how high the stakes are behind the scenes and how much we don't see driving this whole conflict. But what's even bigger is how this thing fits into the entire war, Because, let's be real, this wasn't just about taking out one guy, no matter how powerful he was.
Exactly. And then Netanyahu comes out with that statement right after and says, I'm going to quote this directly, "This is not the end of the war in Gaza. This is the beginning of the end." What does that even mean?
Right. That's got everyone on edge, that phrase. Beginning of the end. It could mean a lot of things. Is Netanyahu saying something big is about to go down? Is this him, rallying his base back home? Or is he sending a message to Hamas, trying to force their hand, maybe?
And where does the rest of the world fit in all this? Seems like everyone's got their own agenda, and then this throws a wrench in it all.
For sure. And don't even get me started on social media. That's a whole other beast. Twitter, TikTok, everyone's going nuts, putting those U.S. congrats right next to Biden and Harris from a week ago, saying we got to de-escalate. Total PR nightmare for Biden, especially with the election coming up.
It's easy to get lost in the politics and the back and forth between countries, but this is about people, right? Families hurting on both sides, and the idea of even more violence. It's scary.
You're totally right. It's easy to get caught up in all that, but the people actually living through this, we can't forget them. Every decision these leaders make, it has real consequences for people who've already been through so much.
It's a lot, no question. So if we try to cut through all the noise, all the opinions, what are we left with? What's the takeaway, the big picture?
A few things are really essential to think about here. First off, taking out someone like Sinwar, that's a huge hit to Hamas, no way around it. This was a powerful guy, influential. They'll feel his loss.
No doubt. But does that equal a weaker Hamas overall? Or could this, make them angrier, make them want revenge even more?
That's the billion-dollar question, right? And it's what all the intelligence people, analysts, everyone's trying to figure out right now, historically. These targeted killings, they've had mixed results. Sometimes it's chaos, infighting, weakens the group. Other times, it's like you poked a hornet's nest, they come back harder, meaner.
Okay, so that's one piece of it. Then there's how the world reacts, which we've talked about it. It's all over the place. What does that mean going forward?
How the international community responds, that's make or break. If everyone got on the same page, put real pressure on both sides to cool it, actually talk, that's the only shot at a real lasting peace. Problem is, getting everyone on the same page is way easier said than done, especially when you've got these powerful countries, their own interests, their own political stuff back home, all tangled up in it.
And we can't forget those hostages still held by Hamas. Their lives are on the line every single day, and one wrong move by anyone could be awful for them.
Absolutely. It's like this whole thing wasn't tense enough, right? But the hostages, that's a humanitarian crisis on top of it all. It needs a fast, peaceful solution. But to get that, you need trust, you need people working together. And right now, with everything going on, that feels almost impossible.
This whole thing is so messed up. Is there any good news, or are we just kidding ourselves here?
Yeah, it's easy to be cynical, for sure. Look at how long this has been going on, all the bloodshed. But I think it's important. We got to remember every conflict, even the ones that seem impossible, they can be solved. It takes guts from leaders, willingness to give a little, but more than anything, it takes believing peace is possible, even when things are this dark.
Those are good words. And I think that's a good place for us to wrap up, even if there's no clear answers right now. Give us a lot to think about. For everyone listening, I'll leave you with this. We've gone through what happened, how people reacted, and what might come next after Sinwar's death. But this story, it's not over. As we go from here, remember the human cost on both sides. Stay informed. And let's keep talking constructively about how we find our way to peace. Thanks for being with us for this deep dive into one of the toughest, most complex issues we're facing in the world today.